Hi, and welcome back to the Blue Screen Brothers. Today I have my good brother Marius with me. Hello, Marius.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Or something.
Or something, yeah. We have had a lot of views on our large episode on app and enterprise registration. So I figure out we should make it a little bit more deeper into the different parts and maybe more to the topping on different episodes instead of having one large one. So we are going to do dive on the app registration by starting to see what it is, how it works, some examples.
Yes, we're going to try to dive into all the different details on, basically all of the different settings in an app registration and on the enterprise application level as well. But now first on the app registration level. So should we just get going?
Yeah, I think so, because I know there are a lot of people that set it up because they have a guide, but they don't know how to modify things. So this is for those guys that need to learn how to set it up or know how they can tweak it and make it better.
Yeah. So we figured that now in this first episode, we'll just dive into the details, talking about the different parameters that we can configure. And then we will have some more like use case videos where we have certain things that we want to solve. Let's say we want to access Microsoft Graph as a service principal and things like that. So we will have like, this is how we do that. But let's start by creating an app registration, and we will do this the demo way. So on the first screen, we can first of all name our app. Depending on the type of app, naming can be quite important because this is user facing, as you can see. It actually says it here. So if you have like a web application where your users are accessing a portal or something, then when they sign in, this name will be shown by Entra ID. Don't say like app SVC01 FXT up.
Yeah, because they also will see it in my apps, Microsoft.com.
Yes, exactly.
So that's a shortcut of every apps you have that's published to you. So it should be understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's call it Magic Portal or something instead.
Yeah.
So something that the users can sort of relate to. So then supported account types. And this is where many people start wondering. So let's talk about the first one, single tenant. So accounts in this organizational directory only. And that means that the users that can sign into our application needs to have an account in our Entra ID tenant.
However, will that be included guests?
That was my however.
That's your however, yeah.
Yes. So the thing is that an invited guest will have an account in your directory. So you can actually you can configure a single tenant application, but you can still allow guests to access your application, but they need to be invited first. So that is sort of the important difference between this and a multi-tenant application, which is the second option here. So I can mention one more thing on the single tenant one first, and that is that you have user flows under external identities in Entra ID as well, where you can actually create self-service sign-up functionality for your apps so that a guest can actually sort of invite themselves. So there are ways to automate that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the multi-tenant one. So what is the difference between this single tenant and multi-tenant app? Well, so when we create an app registration now, this is created in my good workaround dev tenant up here. So the app registration will contain all the technical details on how my app works, like authentication, secrets, and which roles I have defined in my app and things like that. But by setting this multi-tenant type, can allow other tenants to essentially use my app registration. So they will not have a separate secret or anything, but they will have a enterprise application in their tenant that can be used to access the same portal. So that means that I can have 1,000 different customers in 1,000 different tenants, all accessing my app, but only through a single app registration. And that is very handy in many circumstances. And then the two final ones, as you can see, this is still a multi-tenant app, but it also allows for personal Microsoft accounts. That could be very useful in customer scenarios and things, or if you build Xbox apps and stuff. But then you would actually probably use personal Microsoft accounts only. So I'm not gonna say I'm an Xbox developer, so that's not my primary experience field here, but you have the option of allowing personal accounts as well.
So in one short sum up, we can say that when you have a single tenant, you either need to have an account or get created an account to access the app.
Yeah.
But if you have multi-tenant in some way, the account that need to access the application can be in a different tenant or in Xbox, Skype, and so on.
Correct. Yeah. For now, we will choose multi-tenant. And I'm going to show you why.
Business-to-business setup. How would a business-to-business setup work in this? Will business-to-business use the single tenant, or will it use the multi-tenant?
Yeah, and I'll show you the difference on a token level when we configure a multi-tenant app, and how a single tenant app actually works. So last thing, redirect URI. As you see, optional. Here you very often choose one of the two later ones. Of course, you can also integrate mobile apps and things like that. They have a different scheme for URLs, while a web app has a regular HTTPS type of URL. So for testing purposes, we can now actually choose a very well-known Microsoft page, jot.ms, which will help us look at our tokens. So all the sign-ins here will happen through the OpenID Connect standard, which is just an open protocol. So Entra ID relies on those open standards, and we can dive into any token here. So let's register this magic portal. So when we have created our app registration, we will first of all get a unique application ID or client ID. This is what you will usually use for any kind of sign-in. All applications will also get an object ID. This is not really that common to use for anything, really. Not on the app registration level. So there will also be a service principal or enterprise app linked to this app registration by default when I create it through the Entra ID portal. And the object ID of that one is actually used for things like assigning RBAC permissions in Azure and things like that. But this is almost never used. There are circumstances where you use it, but ignore it for now. And then we have our directory ID, tenant ID. This is the same that you will see on the front page of your tenant. So if you go to Entra ID, this value that you see here is the same, tenant ID. So that's the ID where the app registration is created. And you can see multiple organizations for supported account types as we chose. So what we can actually do now is that we can already now sign into our application. But first, let's look quickly at authentication here. So you can see that our URL has been added as a redirect URI, and we can actually add additional platforms. For example, if we have multiple portals all using the same sign-in, then you can add multiple here as well. I would recommend that you don't mix like 3 different portals in the same app registration, because that just gives you a lot of headache over time. So because there really is no reason to combine 3 different portals or web pages or apps or whatever into the same app registration, because you have single sign-on between them, right? So try to limit as much as possible.
I also have seen that you can get example on the web to integrate the setup. Is that on the quick start or?
Yes, exactly. So you have lots of quick start portals and things to work with, but for demo purposes, this is very useful.
Yeah.
So now that we have configured the redirect URI, let's look at these other options. Let's start at the implicit grant and hybrid flows. So many applications, such as Jot.ms, is essentially a public site on the internet where there is no API, there is nothing. You simply want to sign into a very simple application, and since the complexity is very low, people have used these grants for a long time, and the way they work is very simple. So we're actually going to use this, and I will now show you how that works by clicking save here. So when I have enabled this, I can actually now sign into Jot.ms. So what we need to do is to tell Entra ID that we want to sign in, and we do that by navigating to the authorization endpoint with proper parameters, essentially, in our URL. That is usually handled by a library called MSAL, a Microsoft Authentication library. But everything is open, so we can essentially craft our own URL if we want to. Let's copy this that I have on my cheat sheet. So by navigating to this, you can see that there's plenty of options. Let's actually look at the different options now first. So we have it here. Let's focus on this single one. So first of all, you see login microsoftonline.com/our tenant ID. This you can look up in the documentation to see how to locate the authorized endpoint. But essentially everything is available in something called a well-known URL in where you can get all the metadata. Then we have a client ID, which is not correct. So this we need to update because we created a new app registration. So let's remove this and find our new app. So we use this client ID, and we insert it into our come on, let get word wrap here, client ID. Let's just do like this because this has word wrap by default. This, So now that we have inserted our client ID, we can say response type. And response type, this is where you essentially tell Entra ID what type of sign-in is it that we're doing. When I say token here, that means access token, and it tells Entra ID that we want to use an implicit flow. And there's other options. It can be ID underscore token, which also is an implicit flow, and we have code, which is a completely different kind of flow, or not completely, but it works a bit differently. We're not going to dive too deeply into that yet. We have our redirect URI because we can have plenty of different URIs for our application. So we're telling it where to send the token, and this must match one of our redirect URIs on the app. And we have a scope. And as you can see, scope here contains https://graph.microsoft.com/.default. That simply means that we want whatever permissions is configured for the Microsoft Graph on this app. And we can see that by looking at our Magic portal and looking at the API permissions, where we can see that by default, user read as a delegated app permission is or API permission is added, and we'll dive into this as well. So let's go to the URL that we crafted, and this is what we will see now first. So first of all, let's look at this. Well, we're already signed in, so it knows that. It says that our Magic portal, so as you can see, user visible from unverified, because we're not, my dev tenant is not a verified Microsoft partner. And this verification part is important when you have applications where you want end users to be able to consent themselves. But that's not always allowed. Again, we'll dive into that as well. This application is not published by Microsoft because we're publishing it, so Microsoft don't want to take any responsibility. And it says that this app would like to sign in and read your profile. And that is essentially what we see here. User read, that is, as you can see, sign in and read user profile. This is the same text as you see here. If we were to add another API permission here, then that would also appear here because we did this .default thing in the scope. Because I'm an admin, I can also consent on behalf of your organization, meaning that I will consent for any user, or I can simply continue like this, where I only consent for myself. And now we sign in, and this is the page. So what you will see up here now is the implicit flow and how it works. So essentially, we will see that jot.ms, we were sent there with this hashtag access token equals, and then a base64 encoded value. And this is used, so the implicit flow is used in my client, meaning that my web browser has access to this token and can essentially do whatever it will want with it. And you can see a jot is combined in 3 pieces. It's a header, this one. It's a payload, which is this one, and it's a signature. And jot.ms has the ability to decode it, and this is just base64, so any person can do that because this is not encrypted or anything. So as you can see here, this says something about what key is used, for example, this -KI3 and so on. And we can actually find all of this data if we want to. So I didn't prepare that URL, but we can actually take this URL here and find a well-known, I believe it's something like well-known /OIDC configuration or something. I don't remember. Well-known OIDC. So just search for something like that, and we will find a well-known someone has used it. So as you can see, I just found a Norwegian random page. They have the same thing, because this is always the case that they use this well-known /OpenID -configuration. So if I were to write this without a typo, then I would get this this JSON here. So this actually tells me a lot of things. For example, our authorization endpoint is actually listed here. So you can see that the URL that we crafted contains this OAuth2/2/authorize. I can also find something called JAWS URI, which contains all my keys. So if I were to go to this URL here instead, as you can see, a common key for all Entra IDs, we can actually find our key ID. This key ID should be present here. As you can see, this key ID is actually one of the Entra ID keys. So this is how an application would go ahead and verify that this header here, or actually this signature, is valid and signed by Entra ID and not by my self-signed certificate. Because I can craft everything here, no problem, but I cannot craft a signature in a valid way. And what we will see here now, since this is a single tenant, or when I signed in, so this is a multi-tenant application, but you will see this ISS, which is issuer. And here you can see that the issuer is actually my tenant, the same 237 value. And I signed into the Magic Portal, and here is all my details, my IP address, my different kinds of things. And these are all configured, or most of this is partially configurable. We'll show that as well eventually. But let's do one more thing before we stop episode 1 and
just a quick this is a great way if you have trouble to verify your authentications, right? So you can send it to the MS site. Correct. And actually see what it contains to verify that this is actually what I'm asking for when I'm setting up your token.
Yep, that is correct, and you can actually see everything that this issues. So, for example, I can see my UPN, and if I had Entra ID roles, I wouldn't get that type of information, and all is configurable on the different apps. So let's do one thing. Let's jump over. Let's copy the same URL and jump to another tenant. So now I'm in Westeros. I'm in another Entra ID tenant. Let's go to the same URL. Almost single sign-on. So when I did this, so now I went to the same URL and I got an error message. And why am I seeing this error message? Because this is the multi-tenant application. And the answer is, if you look at the URL, we go to this tenant to authenticate. So we actually go to this authorize endpoint for this tenant. And I'm not a guest, I'm not anything in this tenant. So that's why I'm getting this, well, this admin guy doesn't exist in the good workaround dev tenant. So you cannot access this Magic Portal application. However, if I just change one thing in this URL, I replace this with common, I will now tell Entra ID that, help me find my own tenant, essentially. Common means that any tenant will be able to sign in to that URL. So you will essentially just get home realm discovery and be able to authenticate. And I can do this because this is a multi-tenant app. And now you can see the same thing that we saw earlier, that permission requested, magic portal, unverified, and everything. So let's accept it.
But did you now do this without having an enterprise application in your tenant?
Yes. But now I will have an enterprise application in my tenant. So I didn't have one, but now I have one. And then now you can see that everything is the same. So we have UPN, we have tenant ID, we have name, IP address, and everything. The same things in our OpenID Connect access token. However, the issuer here is different. So now it's 4A9. Earlier it was 237. So I signed in from another tenant. And that means that you can, on your portal side, look at this value, see that, no, this tenant is not allowed to sign into this app. So you could whitelist 20 tenants, for example, and things like that. And then just one more thing, that is, if we now were to take this admin account here and invite it to our tenant where we started. So this is called admin at this. So let's go back to our tenant where we created our app registration, and we go to users and invite him, because he wasn't invited, right?
Yeah.
So now let's do admin at this and send him an invite. So what will happen now is that after we have successfully invited our user, if we use this URL that we previously had an error message, where we sign into login microsoftonline.com/tenantid, not common. If we try to sign in now, then we will actually be able to, first of all, accept a B2B invite automatically. And I had some MFA and stuff going on, so through conditional access.
Of course, security, right? So
always.
So. And that's also sometimes a bit of a challenge, because you can see that you invite guests that don't use MFA, and you invite them into your tenant, and suddenly they have to set it up. So they are, it doesn't work, right? So
and this is actually a good demo, even though it wasn't all that intentional. So because what happened now is that I tried to sign into this other tenant through B2B. So my Westeros admin tried to sign into the Good Workaround Dev tenant. That means that we are now hitting the policies of Good Workaround Dev tenant rather than my own organization. And that's why I got MFA requirements suddenly. And we can get around this by we can either register for MFA in that tenant or add cross-tenant access settings that trusts MFA from other tenants. We can get into that as well. But now our episode is long enough for this this time.
Perfect. But we will continue deep diving. So episode 2 should be right around the corner.
Yeah.
So ta-ta for this time.
Ta-da.